Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the user manual for the world's biggest democracy, India's constitution. But we're not just reading the rules. We're also going to find out how you can actually edit the document itself. So let's start with a really interesting idea. We always think about constitutions in terms of our rights, what the government owes us. But what if it was a two-way street? What if the rule book also spelled out what we owe the country? In India, that's not just the hypothetical. It's written right in. And that brings us to our first topic, the fundamental duties. Now, the really wild part about these is that they weren't in the original Constitution at all. Nope. They were actually added in much, much later. Just look at this timeline. The Constitution gets adopted in 1950, and it's all about rights, rights, rights. Then, boom, 26 years later, in 1976, 10 duties suddenly appear. And they even added an 11th one as recently as 2002. So this is a pretty modern invention, constitutionally speaking. So what are we talking about here? Well, it's a real mix. You've got the expected stuff, like respecting the flag and the anthem, but then you have these broader ideas, like promoting harmony, safeguarding public property, and even a duty to develop a scientific temper. The last one added even makes it a parent's duty to educate their kids. Okay, so these are all really noble ideas. But what happens if you don't do them? I mean, can you get arrested for not having a scientific temper? This is where things get really, really interesting, because it all comes down to whether these duties are actual laws or just nice suggestions. And here is the core difference. Your fundamental rights, they're like a legal shield. If someone violates them, you can take them to court. They are totally enforceable. But the fundamental duties, well, they're not. You can't be dragged into court just because you failed to perform one of these duties. Which kind of makes them sound a bit powerless, right? If there's no punishment, what's to stop anyone from just ignoring them completely? Well, it turns out there's a really clever legal workaround. So, back in 1999, this group called the Verma Committee was put together to figure this exact problem out. How do we give these duties some teeth? And what they found was fascinating. The duties already had teeth, just not in the way you'd expect. Here's the big reveal. The committee realized that while you can't be punished for violating the duty itself, there are tons of other laws on the books that punish the exact same behavior. It's like a legal backdoor. Let me give you some examples. There's a duty to respect the national flag. Now, you can't be prosecuted under the duties section for not doing that, but you can be prosecuted under a specific law, the Prevention of Insults to National Honor Act. See how that works? Same goes for promoting disharmony or protecting women. There are other separate laws that handle it. It's a really smart system of indirect enforcement. Okay, so we've seen how new ideas can get woven into the Constitution. Now let's pull the camera back a bit. How do you change the entire rulebook itself? How does a country go about amending its most important document? Well, it all comes down to one specific part of the Constitution, Article 368. This is the section that basically says, hey, Parliament, you have the power to change things. It's what makes the Constitution a living document, something that can actually adapt over time. And the process for doing that is really tough. A bill to amend the Constitution has to be introduced and then passed in both houses of Parliament. And here's the kicker. Unlike a normal law, if the two houses can't agree, the bill just dies. There's no joint session, no compromise. It has to pass both houses independently. And only then does it go to the president for the final mandatory signature. But, and this is a big but, passing the bill isn't a one-size-fits-all thing. It's more like there are 3 different kinds of locks on the Constitution. And to make a change, you need the right key. Let's break down those 3 keys. First, you have the simple majority. Think of this as your basic house key. It's for more routine changes, like creating a new state. Then you have the special majority, which is way harder to get. This is like a high security key, and you need it to change really important things, like our fundamental rights. And finally, there's the master key. If you want to change anything that affects the balance of power between the central government and the states, you need that special majority, plus you need to get more than half of all the state legislatures in India to agree. That is a huge hurdle to clear. So, Parliament has all this power, with these different keys to change the Constitution. It really begs the ultimate question, doesn't it? Is there anything they can't change? Could they, with enough votes, just rewrite the whole thing from scratch?
Well, in 1973, the Supreme Court of India gave a truly historic answer to that question. In this massive landmark case, they said, yes, Parliament can amend the Constitution, but it cannot destroy its basic structure.
So what on earth is this basic structure? Well, it's not actually a list written down in the Constitution. It's a set of core principles that the court has identified over the years as being the absolute, non-negotiable pillars of the entire document. Things like secularism, free and fair elections, the rule of law, you get the idea. Parliament can renovate the building, but it absolutely cannot knock down these load-bearing walls.
And really, that's the bottom line. This basic structure doctrine is the ultimate safety feature. It's the firewall that protects the very soul of the Constitution, making sure that no matter how politics change, its fundamental democratic character can never be amended away.
And all of this leaves us with a pretty deep final thought. This whole system, the citizens' duties, Parliament's power to change things, and the court's power to stop them, is a constant dance. It's a democracy trying to figure out, in real time, how to balance what the people want today with the core principles it was founded on. And that's a balancing act that never truly ends.